fascism was being discussed. Ever since fascism arose in Italy, it was of course important that communists try and understand what fascism was. And at the 4th Congress, you find 3 positions, broadly speaking. We can say that one was a position which emphasized fascism as a movement. One was a position which emphasized fascism as an agent of the bourgeoisie. And the third was an attempt at arriving at a dialectical synthesis between these two. There were some who felt that I'm not going into all the names and the detailed debates, because now we do have an advantage. The total discussions of the 3rd and 4th Congresses of the Communist International have been translated into English and published. So all the views which were put forward, not just speeches of leaders, but of every delegate, is available. It's not very cheap and it's not very small, because each volume is about 1500 pages. But people who want to look at the early communist debates about the United Front and other issues will get everything there. So those who were talking about fascism as a movement stressed that, look, it's not a typical right-wing thing, because by typical right-wing people understood the 19th century model where the state uses the police and movement components are negligible. The old right, the semi-feudal right or the bourgeois right, did not use mass movements. So they were saying this is a mass movement. Then there were people who were simply arguing that, well, objectively fascism serves the bourgeoisie, so that is the crucial component. And there were others. For example, Clara Zetkin at the 4th Congress, not just Zetkin but a few others like a Hungarian delegate and others, they made the point that both these elements exist in fascism. They pointed out the fact that fascism did not arise and a mass movement cannot be created by the traditional bourgeois leaders, which is why the fascist leaders themselves were people of a new kind. These were not the old elite, people who had gone to the best schools and military training and this kind of thing. If you look at Hitler's party, there was only one person with a very high military rank, that was Goering, who had been a high-ranking officer. The other military people in Hitler's party in the army had been hardly lieutenants and captains and sergeants, things of this kind, or even rank-and-file soldiers. They had not been high-ranking officials. They were not people from upper bourgeois circles. And Zetkin and others pointed out that the way fascism serves the bourgeoisie also appears quite distinct from the way that other parties do. When you talk about a straightforward bourgeois party, it's a party which is led by people who are coming from the bourgeoisie or from professional layers which are close to the bourgeoisie. That was what the 19th century traditional bourgeois parties looked like. When you look at the fascist leadership, not just the cadre base, this was rather a different kind of party. And the kind of autonomous demands that the fascists were making was distinct from what bourgeois parties do. When a bourgeois party enters the government, That's it, alright, it is a bourgeois party. It operates within bourgeois parameters depending upon mass pressure. It might do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but its basic goal is serving the class goals of the bourgeoisie. The fascists were displaying that they had an autonomous agenda of their own over and beyond the specific class goals of the bourgeoisie. This debate would die down in the 5th and 6th Congresses. In the 5th Congress, Stalin for the first time makes an intervention, and Stalin's argument is that fascism and social democracy should not be seen as enemies. He says they are twins and not opposites, and that fascism is the most aggressive wing of the bourgeoisie, which however relies on the social democracy. So his argument is that fascism and social democracy can coexist. After the 5th Congress, because there was a period of stabilization of European capital, the discussion over fascism tended to die down. But shortly after the 6th Congress of the Communist International, the Communist International took a very sharp sectarian ultra-left line. I'm using this term because there can be different kinds of ultra-leftism. One can make an error in judgment and decide that the moment of revolution has arrived when the moment of revolution is still some distance away, and try to have an insurrection or a guerrilla struggle or whatever. That is a very different kind of ultra-leftism, if you want to call it ultra-leftism, to what I am talking about. Because what the Communist International said after the 6th Congress is that objectively all parties other than the communists are fascists to one degree or the other. And the social democrats are the worst because they are using socialist rhetoric to mask their fascism. So this is the point from which the term social fascism comes to be used in communist political language. So in 1930, the social democrats are pushed out of government in Germany, and German bourgeoisie was determined that they would not have the social democrats back, because having the social democrats in government meant one particular form of government. It meant a bourgeois government which would, however, provide a degree of welfare measures to the workers, because the social democracy's base was the working class, a reformist politics within the working class. But to be reformist, you have to occasionally give something or the other. It need not be something huge, but it has to be something. With the 1929 crisis, the Germans, who were already relatively weaker compared to many of their rivals because of their First World War defeat, were not willing, the German bourgeoisie was not willing to have the Social Democrats as a partner in the central government. So if the Social Democrats did not win an outright majority, they would not be able to form government, because no bourgeois party henceforth would form a coalition with them. You have the German National People's Party, which was the most right-wing of the traditional parties, as the dominant partner within the right wing, and they would prop up a weak government led by Chancellor Gruening. But the Communist Party went on arguing that the Social Democrats continue to represent the biggest danger. Even as Hitler's votes start growing, in 1928, the Nazis had received 800,000 votes, 8 lakh votes, minuscule. It increased 8 times to 64 lakh votes in 1930. They became one of the largest parties in parliament. But the communists argued that why point to the Nazis as separately fascist? The Social Democrats are also fascist. And they continued to pursue this policy to devastating effect. In Germany, the provinces were of different shape, size naturally, and Prussia was still, because old monarchical Prussia was still one province. So if somebody controlled the Prussian state government, they were almost as strong as the central government itself. And the Prussian parliament had a social democratic majority, which could not be removed by electoral means. The Nazis called a referendum that people are fed up with the Social Democrats, there should be a referendum and they should go. The Communist Party put forward a set of ultimatum-shaped demands to the Social Democrats, and when the Social Democrats did not accept all their demands, the Communists said, in that case, we are also joining the referendum. They said that this is not the Nazis' referendum, this is now our referendum, this is the red referendum. But in effect, it meant that while the Communists would refuse to make a united front with the Social Democrats against the Nazis, they were willing to make a united front with the Nazis against the Social Democrats to call for a toppling of the communist government, social democratic government. This is something that this lesson will never go away, tragically. Instead of learning from it, what has happened is the theory of social fascism has never been clearly analyzed and repudiated as a false theory. Even when the 7th Congress of the Communist International took up a new line, I'll be coming to that shortly, they never said that our entire understanding was wrong. What they said was that our application was wrong. What they said was that we had not made a distinction between the social democratic leaders and the rank and file. In other words, it was right to call the social democratic leaders fascists. And they were saying this at a time when social democratic and communist leaders were both in Hitler's prisons. So the theory of social fascism would remain, and within the international communist movement, on the left side, it would periodically reappear. I remember in 1979, the organization which at that time was calling itself Central Committee CPIML, in other words, the organization